Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in. On today's episode of conventioNOT, we introduce Taylor Piedmonte. Taylor is an actor first and foremost. He's got a rap album coming out soon, and he regularly hosts a podcast everyone should check out called NBA Junkies. Our chat with Taylor was pretty wide-ranging, but the common thread throughout was his passion and his attitude towards this world of creativity, which, as we all know, is full of ups and downs and bumps and bruises. Taylor's not going anywhere. Tune in, everyone. Get to know this guy. You're going to love him, and you're going to see more of him in the future. I guarantee it.
I
like to give an anti-shout out to Zoom.
At this point, I think that's appropriate. There's something going on.
Yeah.
I think I might have something to do with it, but let's go with Zoom.
It's leaving a bit to be desired, to say the least.
Taylor Piedmonte, from all over the place, really, but currently located in
That's
Hollywood. Right. And Taylor and his friend Jeff were kind enough to have Mike and I on their podcast this summer, in which Mike shared his vast knowledge about the NBA, and I just kind of commented about what I thought might happen. And that drew some later feedback from our buddy Steve, who called me out on the show. But you know what? I hope he's listening right now. He's probably on a road trip somewhere. It's back in season, and I got myself a notebook, and I'm taking notes from the podcast this year, and I'm taking notes from his season, and I'm going to be ready. I'm going to be ready for the playoffs. So
thanks, man.
Welcome.
Good to be on. Thanks for having me. I'm all caught up. I've listened to all the episodes. I'm regular. Yeah, I love it.
No, it's really awesome to have you on. As you know, we're fans of all your work as well, and I mean we're gonna get into it, but I do have to say that it was really fun revisiting our guest appearance on NBA Junkies with our buddy Steve Hetzel, because I mean he's a friggin' NBA coach, right? So he knows way more than any of us know. But he's also, like him and Ryan and I go way back. So he's able to be very direct with Ryan, and if anything, I thought harsh. I was like, dang, Steve, give the guy, he ain't getting paid by an NBA team. He threw out some names. He knew his Hawks. I mean, I was. With that said, it's always fun to see Ryan get teased a little bit. So that was fun for me.
I also butted up on the performance enhancing drugs a little bit. And I think that when I listened to it the second time, I talked about that a little bit. And you know what? I may have been incorrect, but one of those Hawks this year is sitting out for several games because of performance.
Collins, he got 25 games.
Yeah, man.
Stud too.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk too specific about the NBA because it alienates our third guest here. But I do want to ask, if I may, when can we look forward to the next episode of NBA Junkies?
Couple more weeks, maybe, something like that.
Okay. I mean, I imagine with the new season, anyone NBA interested, this is the dawn of a new era this season. So I would encourage anyone who's into basketball on a professional level to tune in to NBA Junkies, because you guys are you talk about it real formally and informally. So I think regardless of your level of interest or kind of insight into the NBA, you guys are really good educators and just a good listen on the topic. So I look forward to the next episode, brother.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Jeff and I we have a lot of fun with that. It was his idea, actually. I had just moved into a house that he was living in. We became roommates probably about a year and a half ago, maybe a little bit more than that. And I actually didn't know him. That kind of thing happens a lot in LA, and we'll get into that, of moving in with someone you don't even know, and then you meet them once you become their roommate, kind of thing. It's a very LA thing, so we met. It was cool. And then probably a couple days in, I was sitting in the living room watching the Pistons game, and he was like, "Oh, dude, you like basketball?" I was like, "Yeah, man, I love basketball." And this dude knew everything.
He's diehard, right?
Yeah. I see, and I had never met anyone who knew who knew as much as I did, which he does, about like the salary cap and like the assistants and just like an obsession level thing. And he did, and it was like I remember that conversation. Like I remember that day, and just being like, oh wow, like this worked out. Like
that's perfect.
This is the one guy I've met who knows about like the salary cap and stuff like that, like the minutia to that level. And he happens to be my roommate. So eventually he was just like, hey man, do you want to do an NBA podcast? I was like, yeah.
That's sick.
So that's how that got started. And he's great, man. He edits it. And then we put it out it's out on iTunes and Spotify. Yeah, it's fun. It was good having you guys on too. That was probably my favorite episode.
I had just left Toronto. They had just finished it, and so we had some topical things to discuss. Please go on, Ryan.
Well, it was the end of the season, and things were just starting to kind of get fired up for us. I think we might be like 1,000 downloads since then, and I remember because we're getting things kind of like going. You alluded to the different like facets or the way that things are in LA, and one of the things that I think is pretty like dynamic, of course, like it's part of creating and building a career. And I know both of you guys are in entertainment, but this is the beginning of your career in entertainment, man. Like every time I look on one of my social feeds, or I look on some piece, or I talk to like your cousin or something like this, there's something new with you. There is a rap album or a second rap album role in a film or something you're working on writing or so on and so forth. So usually when we have guests on the show, we kind of have this like a little bit of a predetermined path, right? Because they become successful in one thing. Today isn't so much about like honoring your success which I want to acknowledge your success in your acting career and your creative career. But I think it's a little bit more what I'm excited to talk about. And I want you to kind of start with today is what it is that draws you toward different things. You talked about the podcast, and it was almost like in passing, and now I would assume you guys have built like a friendship because you built this before. But like, how in the hell do you go from producing a film in college to and I know some of these things, I'm gonna hit them real quick and then I'm gonna hand it over to you because I want to hear your voice, not mine. But like, how do you go from there to moving to LA, to coming to Atlanta to help produce a show, to working on a film, to where you are now? And I know I skipped a few years, but start us off somewhere.
Yeah.
Tell us about like tell us about your career, man. Tell us what you do.
I always had interest in movies since I was a kid. Like just like Star Wars and Men in Black was one of my favorites. But I remember from like a pretty young age, probably like 8. I remember I would find myself imagining that I was in a movie. Like I'd just be walking around the house doing something, and I would just imagine that I was in a movie. But like, not that the universe, I wasn't imagining that this universe was like some other universe. It was like me, and it was like Taylor in a movie. It was like me being filmed and appearing in a movie. And I didn't really put that together until like a couple of years ago. I kind of look back on that and I was like, oh wow, that's like where it started. But I was doing that as a kid, and then I just like things ramped up. Like I wasn't really into kid movies. I was into like bigger, like older, like adult movies, I guess. Like I remember when I was 7, I got to see Air Force One in theaters, which was a rated R movie, and I just never looked back. Like I was just like, from then on, I never wanted to see an animated movie. I never wanted to see a PG movie. Like after that, it was all. Who
took you to that first movie?
My parents did.
Nice.
I remember. Right. Yeah, I remember. Actually, remember the phone. Like my mom was coming home from work, and she called, and she was like, "Hey, I think you, me and your dad are gonna go see Air Force One tonight." And I was like, whoa, that's cool. Like, because I knew it was rated R.
Sure.
That was it, man. Like, and it was weird. Like, I remember at the time too, in the 90s or whatever. As a kid, I was under this impression that Harrison Ford was the best actor in the world, and it was like that was a fact, sort of like Bill Clinton was president. Like it was just something everybody knew. Like when I was, it was just like a truth. Yeah. It was like a truth in my mind. And then, as I grew up, I was like, okay, well, he's really good. There's plenty of great actors out there, but like, just, Star Wars and Indiana Jones, stuff like that. And then Air Force One and
whoever they made Indiana Jones, his roles, those for us, for boys growing up in the late 80s and 90s. I mean,
so epic.
I shared that sentiment. I didn't even think of him as an actor, though, to be honest. Like, I just thought of him as that person.
So that's also the same era, like when there's video cameras at home and stuff. So does it translate? Are you at that point in time? I mean, are you VHSing, or do you have like the camera set up on the makeshift iPod at home as well? Or does that come later in like high school? Okay.
Yeah, that was later. That was in high school. And that was after I got into theater and stuff. But yeah, it was Star Wars and Harrison Ford type stuff and rated R movies and the Blockbuster in Monroe, Michigan on Telegraph, where my mom would just take me and I'd get 4 movies and 2 video games and I was set.
That's like a good weekend.
Yeah. I mean, there was more to it than that, but like that was the best.
There were times when you have to ration. There were times when you used to have to ration content, which I always think is it's like this thing that is no longer understood. So you would ration music content.
We didn't used to watch 8 hours straight. Like, that was not normal.
Yeah, I mean, you got that. There was a deal, especially as a young person. I mean, like, I guess money is subjective, but in most cases, as a young person, it would be like rent X and get X free, and it'd be this mix and match, whether it be Blockbuster, Family Video, wherever it is you go. But you had to ration that content throughout the weekend, because it wasn't like somebody was eager to take your ass back to the store to get that again, right? Today's kids will not understand that at all. There's my official old man statement of the show, or first old man statement of the show.
Well, yeah, they don't need it, right? They don't need anyone's help to get access to all that stuff. I mean, imagine if you had access to Harrison Ford's entire catalog when you were 8 years old. I mean, that was why you kept going back to Blockbuster, right?
Yeah,
sure.
Well, it also encouraged younger people to watch stuff that was around before they were born. It encouraged younger people to watch older movies and stuff because they were all right there. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just the whole store, except for the new releases. It's just all these older movies, and they're like, usually if it made it into Blockbuster, it was a pretty good movie for the most part. And that's just a lot where a lot of it started. So that another thing, an early spark, which I've kind of identified, after the fact, was so I went to a Montessori school, and we had this thing called the opera, and it was the whole once a week in February, I think it was February. Yeah, once a week, every February, it would be opera week, and the whole school, which was like, preschool through like 9th grade, the whole school came together and put together this musical acting kind of show called the opera. That was written by, I think, our music teacher, and it was like there was acting in it. I mean, it wasn't like an opera in the literal sense. It was more just like a production that production the school would do. It was a little play, with music, and everyone was involved, and it was the best week of the year. I mean, you didn't have to really do much. I mean, you didn't have to like do much classwork or as much, and it was just like the community aspect of that, of like putting together a show, and it was magical, and that was one of the best parts of that schooling experience, was that, among many others. I was pretty lucky in a lot of ways with education my whole life, but it started from the beginning with Montessori, because they were huge about the arts. Like probably seventh grade was the first time I ever like auditioned for, maybe 6th grade, I like auditioned for something and like wanted it, Okay. But it was so new to me. It wasn't like, I was 11. I wasn't like, oh, I'm an actor. No, it was just like, oh, this is just the opera. And so yeah, that's all going down. So I finished 8th grade. I'm still in Monroe, Michigan, which is where Ryan and I are from. And there's 7 people in my 8th grade class. I was one of 7. So I had a lot of attention paid to me, which was great education wise. My education was great. I was smart as hell, but socially, you know, I wasn't the most social. There was some issues, some gaps, I'd say. There's some gaps that I had socially at that point. My parents and my sister and I moved to Pittsburgh then. So I started in a public high school in a different state where I didn't know anyone except for my parents and my sister. And, that was intense.
But you love acting. I'm sure they really welcomed you with warm arms. Oh, what a rough go.
And I didn't even know that yet. That's the thing. Like, I knew, like, yeah, in my mind, I wanted to be in movies, but I wouldn't have even said that out loud yet. Like, at that point, I still thought, yeah, I wouldn't have even known.
Probably best to keep it.
No, I mean, like,
Poor
I wouldn't
bastard.
have even been able to put it together like that. I was like,
Sure.
oh yeah, movies are cool. But so I get there and I'm like, you know, man, I'm like, it was like, it's like the movies. Like I sat alone at lunch for like,
Yeah.
I sat alone at lunch probably for like 2/3 of my freshman year. And when I say I was the only one doing that, I mean, I was the only one doing that. Like,
Oh man.
the one in that period, it was me. And
Oh,
and then thankfully by like, yeah, probably February, maybe, I don't know. Thankfully by like somewhere in the second half of that school year, there was another table of like 3 or 4 kids who maybe would have been sitting alone if it weren't for the fact that they knew each other. Like, it was the other, they kind of came and found me and were like, hey, do you want to stay with us? I was like, yeah, for sure. Anyway, that's just kind of where I was at, but I was into sports. But you know, like I didn't get there early enough to join the soccer team. I didn't get there early enough in the summer to join the soccer team. I went to an open tryout. I went to an open gym for basketball, and I was just like completely over. I was just like,
You can't just pivot into sports in freshman year. I mean, of any like sizable high school. I mean, it just.
Well, everyone knew each other. So
dude,
it's
a public school in Pittsburgh. Like, I'm sorry, man, but unless you were the baddest ass in Monroe, good luck.
No,
right.
I mean,
which I was not. Yeah, and it was so. It just didn't really. So sports didn't really take off. Nothing took off, and I was like, it was tough. It was, and I was, and like I said, I was young for my grade. Like, I was still 13. I was still 13 until like Thanksgiving of freshman year, and but anyway, so at one point, they had auditions for a play, and they did a lot of plays at my high school. They did like 3 or 4 a year, and like a couple plays in a musical every year, and like variety. And anyway, there was this play. It's called Captain Fantastic, and they had auditions. And I remember my dad being like, "Hey, you know, maybe you should audition for that play. Maybe that'd be cool." And I was like, "Yeah, for sure." So I did, and I got in. And then that's it. Like that. Everything since then has been related to that. Like, I never stopped. I was in every play except for one in high school. And that was it now. That was like, from then on, it was all about acting. And it came and still comes more naturally than anything else I've ever done or tried. I mean, we'll get into rap too. Like that was similar in a sense, but like the love aspect and the just doing something that feels right. And because I wasn't a very confident person at that point, but like I knew right away that I could act. It was never a question.
What a guiding light, right? I mean, fuck, you're 14 years old. It's like the worst time of your life to move somewhere. You know, you're just like a kid, I'm sure. Then you move across the country. You're a big ass school. You come from, you know, Montessori school by and large, especially in our hometown, it's very small. And now you're acting.
Yeah. And
the hardest time of your life to be able to find something that's the greatest love of your life. That's such a commitment that you don't really even know like what a commitment is at that age, you know, but now 20 years later, that commitment holds strong, and, you know, you're working your 10,000 hours in very easily.
You know, theater groups are, you know, it is outcasts sometimes. It is a group of outcasts sometimes, and or at least there's an element of that. But it was, I don't know, man. Like they cared about me. They cared about me, and they paid attention to me.
It's community.
And it was a community, and I just loved it. I still do. I mean, that was a great time. High school ended up being really cool. You know, like a lot of people complain about high school. As I've gone through adult life, when the subject of high school comes up, I've noticed like a lot of people are like, it's almost rare for me, and maybe that's just the circles I end up in, but it's almost rare for me to meet someone who's like, oh yeah, high school was awesome. But for me, it was.
Well, those are the bars you're hanging out at. You go to some shittier bars,
right?
You find the lower, the shittier the spot you're hanging out at, the earlier in life they peaked.
And you're also surrounded, like you're in a career that's surrounded with like you mentioned there, outcasts. And I'm not going to typecast theater, right? But I'm going to tell you. Yeah. I'm going to tell you that at my fucking high school, theater was not a thing, right? Because it wasn't a strong like department. The band was a thing, and it was a big thing, and it was very popular. And I come to understand that, like, you know, a lot of people who were in band elsewhere were like, you know, nerds or geeks or whatever, outcasts.
Yeah.
So I have to imagine that, like, you know, a lot of the people, when you start to talk about high school, they were outcasts, right? Because like, for Mike, I mean, he peaked in high school, and like that's just like where this is like where he still is.
That is not true.
Our listeners can't see, but he has an Allen Park Jags football jersey with pads on. Right?
Yeah, that was my prime. That was my prime.
But okay, so I know I'm leading a bit of this interview, and forgive me for that. I mean, you know, the role is to try to be an honest and an earnest journalist. But so you come from high school, and you find your love, and then something really crazy happens. You come back to Michigan, and this is where, like, I always thought this is very unique, is that you create a film in college that gets produced, right?
Well, I was in films in college that got produced. The movie, the short film that I produced was later. It was in 2015. Okay. But near the end of high school, I still didn't even though theater and acting, like, that was my thing, loved it. Even by the time high school ended, I still wasn't necessarily thinking that I was going to go into that or major in that or pursue that as a career, because it wasn't that I was against it. It's just that it just hadn't really even seemed like a possibility yet, because it was. I mean, the high school I went to was competitive. It was a public high school, but it was like very competitive academically, and it was all about, you know, SATs and this college and that college and extracurriculars and like being a theater major wasn't like encouraged by the school really, or I don't know. And my parents were my parents have always been supportive of everything I've done in every way, and they always told me I could do whatever, you know, I could do whatever I put my mind to, but it wasn't discussed. Me majoring in theater wasn't really discussed until it was like, until I was pretty much done applying for colleges as like a communications major, and like got into colleges as a communications major. And then I was like, it was just, high school was wrapping up, and I was just like, wait a minute, I should probably just try to be a movie star, because why not? Like, why would I do anything else? I mean, it's like, that's what I do. That's what I want to do. Because that's it. The summer after I graduated high school, I just remember being in my basement, like reading Breaking Into Acting for Dummies and watching Entourage for the first time, and just being like, oh, okay, I'm going to go to college, major in theater, and then move to LA right away. That's what I'm doing. So I decided that then. I decided when I was 17 that I was going to just do it. Major in theater, no minor, which, you know, I probably would do that differently if I went back. It was just like, I'm going to major in theater, not going to get a minor. I'm just going to go try to be in movies. So ended up at Aquinas in Michigan, which had a small theater program, but a good one. And so it was cool to get in kind of at the ground floor there. There was a new director of the program was there the year I got there. So they were kind of starting over, and it was a lot, you know, it was similar to Montessori, and then it was small. And then I was getting some of my acting classes were like 7 people. So there was a lot of one-on-one attention there. And, you know, it was big fish in the small pond scenario. And theater, I mean, college was cool too. Like I ended up loving college too, and acting and theater had a lot to do with that. But in terms of film then, like I got it. There was an independent film in 2008 that I got into and had like 2 scenes in, but that I found out about at some theatrical audition, I think. But the big thing that was happening at the time, and this was fortunate, is that there was a film tax incentive program in Michigan that was like great. It was so those started popping up. Like Louisiana was the first state. It was one of the first states to do that. Louisiana had one that started in 2002 that they still have, and is still considered like one of the best. But Michigan got their film incentive program in 2008 because out of kind of necessity and kind of just like because it was 2008 and it was Detroit and it was Michigan. It's like, well, let's try it. Michigan can look like anywhere. Seasons, you got all the landscapes, you got it all, and you got good people, and it's just a great place. So that comes into play in 2008. So I'm doing my thing at college, whatever, theater there, community theater too. But there's there's more movies popping up to audition for than there would have been, you know, than I would have expected for the state of Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
And so like I got two roles in like indie features that were kind of unrelated to that. They were just like smaller things. And then when the second one was like a lead, but so now we're in 2008, but okay. Then there's this movie called Offspring that was totally shooting in Michigan because of the incentive program. Like that's what brought it there. And I auditioned for Offspring, and it was like, you know, a decent size budget. It's still what you would consider, like, it would be called low budget horror, but it wasn't. It had some money, you know. It was a big deal for me, and I got into that when I was 18, and I played a policeman, which I mean, I look young for my age now, but like when I was 18, I looked 14. So, but it was just, you know, big fish in a small pond kind of thing. Came back again because it was Michigan, and they just picked me. And so I got to play a cop in a horror movie when I was 18, which was just so. It's just looking back on it was like unreal. It was so cool. It was the best. It was the best experience. And so I did that. And that movie, actually, bringing it back to Blockbuster, I saw that movie in a Blockbuster. I saw that DVD in a Blockbuster when like, you know, near the end of Blockbuster's run. I was like, oh, I'm in that movie, which was cool. Yeah. Which was cool. So that was an experience. And then about 2 years after that, year and a half after that, maybe 2010 rolls along, and there's this movie called Mimesis, which this movie being shot, I think, in Michigan, maybe had something to do with the incentive program, maybe not. I mean, I'm sure it maybe did, maybe it didn't, but there's a school in Detroit. It's called the Motion Picture Institute, and they do every now and then, every couple of years, the school will produce a feature film at the end of the year that's like, you know, I mean, it's a professionally made film, but like they get, you know, a lot of their students they do internships on it, or like, you know, capstone projects or whatever. So they get, you know, everybody kind of wins. Like the students get to work on a real movie, and the production gets some maybe free labor. Right. So in the summer of 2010, MPI's movie that they were doing was like, you know, I think is the biggest one they had done to that point. It's called Mimesis, and they had an open call. For like the state. I mean, it was posted on Michigan Film Office website or whatever. And I went in there for that open call, and it was packed. Like, it was this building was packed. It was everyone.
And this is the prime when like nobody has a job in Michigan.
Right.
Actually, for those of our listeners who are listening back-to-back episodes, the episode previous to this, Taylor, we talked a lot about like the downfall from 2010 to 2012, in there. But like the film industry is the only thing that's existing.
Yeah.
Right. So like it's jam packed with.
Yeah. It was, and everyone with any interest in movies was showing up, and it was cool. It was a great time. Like, it just timed out right. Anyway, I show up for that, and I got a part in that, a pretty decent part, in Mimesis, and that, there were some names that were in that. Sid Haig, rest in peace. Sid Haig was in that movie. A couple other horror names showed up. Courtney Gaines, who was in Children of the Corn, was in that. But so we shot that movie that summer of 2010, and again, it was like the best 6 days of my life. Best 6 days since the 4 days I did on Offspring 2 years before that. It was just like, it was perfect. And so that was that. And then I graduated college at the end of 2010. I graduated a semester early. I graduated college a couple weeks after I turned 21. And then moved to LA like 2 months after that, which was like, which was cool, but it was a little early to be doing that for me in retrospect.
Hey listeners, it's Ryan. I'm here to talk to you about subscribing to the show. If you haven't done so yet, and this is your first episode, well, take your time. Otherwise, if you listen to us time and time again, please take 1 second, go out and subscribe to the show. The reason we ask you to do that is it helps us appear higher on searches and be more popular across the podcast networks.
LA in general, I'm not sure what what people hear about it really, because I'm just so close to it, but most of it's true. Whatever you would hear about LA or Hollywood, it's true. It's all true. And it's a tough place. And I was young. And so it kind of swallowed me whole at first. But I did have some success though along the way in those first 2 years. I got into another feature, which was cool, which wasn't a horror film. It was like a Breakfast Club homage kind of deal. And through that, I met a lot of people that indirectly or directly became business contacts and friends that are still friends and still people I spend time with. So I was out here for 2 years, and then I moved actually to Atlanta. I kind of needed a break, so I kind of put it out there that I might be leaving LA. A friend of mine who I also wrote screenplays with was like, he was going to Atlanta to work on the first season of a show that this other guy we know was running. And so he was like, hey, I know you're trying to get out of LA. Do you want to come down to Atlanta with me for 6 months? We can work on our screenplays there. And maybe I can get you on the show. Like, we'll be, or at least be around, networking with the show and stuff, and check out a new place, blah, blah, blah. And it'll be cheap because we can live together, and it's Atlanta and everything. So it's cheaper than LA and all that. So I was like, yeah, you know what? Let's do it. So that's how I ended up in Atlanta. And then timing again, Atlanta has a film incentive program at that point that was kind of taken off. Right. And now is huge. Huge. Atlanta now is, if you want to be a film actor, it's LA is the place, but like Atlanta is number two.
At least if you want to be involved in like streaming, there's a lot of streaming production here. I think a lot more of it's like episodic, but they have the similar environment in which mountains are accessible. Snow, maybe not so much, like all year round, but all of the terrain makes it easy. You know what? It's
weird looking back. I wasn't thinking that much at all. I was just kind of living, and I got there. I was like, I don't know. This is probably just going to be 6 months. I'm not sure where I'm going after, but we'll see. But because of that, it was awesome. I just loved it, man. Like I loved Atlanta, and I loved hanging out with you and Anna, and like just doing all kinds of, I mean, it was great.
I mean, it's been a minute. It's been a minute since Atlanta. I'm sorry. I don't think I've ever been quiet for that long on a single episode we've had, but I did want to cut you off, Taylor. You took us from, Montessori to Atlanta, which I know isn't current. But you said so many things, and along the way, I hope it's really abundantly obvious to everyone listening that, like, your fucking attitude is awesome, dude. Like, you're just a really positive, like, bright, shiny dude. Like, I'm not blowing smoke, bud. Like, I hear you talk about these times and these experiences that, people make movies about that kid from out of state moving to town and thinking acting is going to be a good way to meet new people. Like, I'm sorry, but that was a rough ass start in Pittsburgh. And I hear you're recollecting on it, obviously. So I'm sure you're painting a slightly bright picture, but the reality is, like, at an early age, you had interest in movies, and that at some point led for you to desire to be a part of these movies that you were kind of infatuated with as a child. And then, you were fortunate enough to have parents who, it sounds like, were extremely supportive like that.
Yeah.
And again, I'm projecting here because I'm sharing too much of my own experience, but, like, I grew up in the public schools where, like, drama class was, you took it once because you had to and you didn't really want to, and we've talked with some of our other guests that I grew up with, like, just, I didn't grow up in a community where the arts were adequately appreciated, much less people were pushed in those directions. So it's one thing for you to have kind of come across that happenstance, in Montessori and to develop that passion, but man, grade 9, your old man telling you to try out for Captain Fantastic. Like, I'm sorry, but to me, that's like a seminal moment, because, like,
it was.
I'm not saying you had this, like, secret, but you had this thing you were interested in that you maybe hadn't broadcasted to the world yet. Not that many of us know what the hell we want to do when we're in 9th grade, and you did have this passion. And then you were fortunate enough to have parents recognize that passion and support you in pursuing it. I mean, we talk about it on the show a lot, just the need for the support system. And, I don't think that many of us realize, like, we're old now.
Mm-hmm.
Nowadays, we're the kind of people that can see children have those interests and those passions, and, like, just the idea that you had that support. Not everyone does, and I encourage everyone to look for it, because, that little push. I mean, Taylor, you described the subsequent years, I mean, very, through somewhat rose-colored lenses. I know you had some experiences there that were beneficial, but, like, I know it was tough as hell too. Like, you basically go through college and then, your first couple of years thereafter without a steady paycheck. Am I correct? Like, I mean, that's
right,
which you haven't mentioned once as being a source of frustration. You talk about the 2 years in LA, and you said they were rough. I mean, I know people that spend, like, 3 months in LA and then spend 5 years talking about how much it fucked them up and, like, how they'll never be the same. And, like, you're laughing about it. And I go back to my original point, and that I really have to say, man, like, your attitude, you fucking water off a duck's back, dude. Like, I love it. And yeah, of course you've found success, man. You keep showing up with your smile and your attitude. Like, who wouldn't want you on the set?
Thanks.
I love it. So sorry, I didn't mean it. I apologize. I did interject there, but
no, you're good.
I couldn't wait till the end. Because it's just interlaced with your story. And, I think it's important, if people are going to take anything from this, you don't need to be in acting. It's just about the positive pursuit. I love it.
Yeah, it totally is. Thanks, man. What you hit on with supportive parents too, that's a huge part of all this too. My parents and my family in general, my brother and sister and my whole family, they've been supportive the whole time in all kinds of ways. But yeah, in terms of just my parents, like I realized this looking back on it, but to be told continuously that, you know, Taylor, you can do anything you put your mind to, that's rare. Maybe not anymore, but then it was. I don't meet many people whose parents told them that,
Sure.
let alone like a lot. I mean, they told me that a lot,
meant it.
Or meant it, right? Exactly, and they meant it. And so hearing that I could do whatever I put my mind to continuously, they told me that I was sensitive too, and that was okay. I mean, it was obvious. I always was sensitive. I still am, but like I was informed that I was sensitive, and I learned what that word meant from them. But it always came along with, and that's good. Like that's good. That's a good thing. It's it was presented as a gift rather than a curse or something to be ashamed of, because it was, and that plays into arts and acting and all that. I mean, that's the vulnerability. That's it. Like when you're watching Joaquin Phoenix or, you know, 70s Pacino or whoever else, and, you know, and they look in their eyes, like they're sensitive too. And if they didn't think that was okay, if they thought that wasn't okay, we wouldn't be seeing them on screen. I remember the first so we had this seminal moment in high school, my dad telling me, you know, hey, maybe you should audition for this play. But I remember another seminal moment, and it's one of my earliest memories, period. But it's definitely the first memory I have of learning something. The first time I ever felt like I had learned something, my dad told me what optimism was and what pessimism was, and that they were two different things. And he explained what they were, and he said it was just a good idea to be optimistic because it's going to work out better.
Can I, sorry, just real quick, can I ask, what do your parents do for work?
Yeah, I do. I have an older sister and an older brother. My sister's 5 years older. My brother's 10 years older. And so when I was growing up, my dad was an electrical contractor. He owned his own, he was an electrician, and that was the family business on his side. His dad was an electrician. His dad was an electrician. It was called Piedmonte Electric. It was around in Monroe for a while. And then my dad had a company called Mark IV Electric. His name's Mark. And then my mom was, she had a few different jobs. Like the main one when I was growing up was she was an assistant to a State Farm agent. And then later on, she worked in hospitals for a couple of years in different positions. But then like her big job that I think she liked the most was she worked for hospice. She worked for, she was like the volunteer. So most of the people who do hospice in Monroe are volunteers. But so like my mom was the one who was in charge of the volunteers. She was the volunteer coordinator for hospice. Both of those things kind of shifted throughout the years. Like my dad ended up becoming pretty successful. He's the president and CEO of a company now that builds glass factories. He moved on when we moved. Yeah, that was kind of going down when we moved to Pittsburgh.
When you left the state, probably. Okay.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
that was part of it. He's done great in business, and he's a genius. My dad's a genius. And he's a great dad. And my mom's great. She's a genius too in her own way. And it's
well said. I kind of baited you there, and you took it as well as I could have hoped, because like what I was getting at is like, it sounds like your parents kind of mixed it up a little bit in terms of their professions, but let me just say practical. Their jobs were very practical. Yeah. You know, your dad is an electrician. Like that borders on like a manly man's type work, you know, like again, I'm stereotyping, and we're taking it back almost 30 years, but 30 years ago in Michigan, there weren't female electricians. You know what I mean? Like there weren't many of them. As a father to support, and no matter what, keep telling your son, like, chase it, go, be optimistic. Mm-hmm. There's going to be a lot of hurdles. There's going to be a lot of shit in your way.
Hey, thanks for listening today. Are you a reviewer? Do you desire to share your opinion with everybody? Well, don't leave Mike and I at conventioNOT out of your list. Take a second, go out to your podcast provider, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, whatever it is, and review the show. We appreciate it. We read the feedback, and we really need it.
Like everyone is following along, and you're like, I'm gonna take this different route that no one has ever. And dude, in Monroe, did you know any actors? You know what I mean? Like, you don't grow up with an uncle who lived in Hollywood. Like, if you're from Monroe or Allen Park, you don't really know people that live in LA. I mean, and if you do, they're like, they're famous just because they live in LA. Yeah. I'm probably just kind of stereotyping myself here, but like, wait, wasn't Katie Holmes from Monroe?
No, she's from
Christy
Toledo.
Brinkley.
Whoa, Christy Brinkley is from Monroe?
Christy Brinkley's from Monroe.
Holy shit. Yeah, I would have wanted to be an actor. I would have wanted to be an actress then.
But I didn't know. I mean, I didn't know that. Yeah.
Also, a guy named Mike Foster is from Monroe. Who's out and very much so character actor. He was a teacher of mine in high school. Taylor, you didn't describe all that's on your IMDb channel. There's probably 10 or 15 more things than what he mentioned for our listeners. If you want to kind of check out some of the content that Taylor's featured in. But I think that I would guess Mike's probably 20 years older than you and has been working not just as a character actor, but different things for years. I have to think to some regard, I mean, I think I've shaken your dad's hand before, but I don't know him well. But there is a component of it in which when you use your hands, you are creative. And even though a lot of times that stuff is blue collar in its, I hate to typecast people, but in its vision or its wage or its, place in society, which is kind of fucked up, right? That is creative work a lot of times. And so I think there are a lot of people that if their families are fortunate enough to be able to afford those dreams, that starts to happen a little bit, and I think that it gets undersold a lot of times because the social ranking is different for those people who get to create things that are again, like more blue collar.
Definitely. And it was, I mean, like I was fortunate in terms of timing too, in terms of, what ended up happening with career and stuff and just being encouraged and stuff. Like I think about how fortunate I was every day, just in terms of how things have been laid out. But what you were saying about creativity with working with your hands, like that is true. And it did, like my dad, so he ran his own contracting business, and it was him. Like it was him, and he had a secretary, and then everyone else was a contractor for him. So he was creative in that he had to get creative, like
he had to solve problems.
He had to solve problems and just the types of jobs that he would go on and the types of things he would do. Like it was just taking risks. And so my love of risk, I think certainly I inherited from my dad because.
So when you put yourself in those shoes about the risk, because that's definitely something we identify from guest to guest to guest is the folks who come on our show are more tolerant of risk. What would you say to somebody who is just starting out? Because success, let's be fair to what you just said, is I better become successful. Again, you're not a braggadocious person, but look at your resume and you'll see that you are successful in those ways and in participating. What would you say to somebody right now who wants to begin a creative career?
Yeah, I would say be kind to yourself and be patient with everything. Just try to be patient, period, because it's the world is not going to do that for you. The world is going to try to make you impatient. It's an impatient world. I mean, like in general, but also specifically with entertainment. Be clear. And, cause that's one thing that I struggled with was I was about my goals, at least. I knew that I wanted to be in movies. I knew that I wanted to be an actor, and I knew that I wanted to go to LA and pursue it there on the highest level. But beyond that, I wasn't really specific about the steps. Which again, if I'm talking to someone who's starting off, you're 17 or so, you're gonna learn. You're gonna learn the way you learn. You're gonna learn by doing it and by seeing it yourself. But give yourself a break, I'd say, and be grateful that you care enough about it to be doing it and pursuing it, because Yeah, it's hard. I mean, yeah, it's hard. And you know, people know that it's hard to be in movie, like to have a career in movies or in TV. And I, you know, yeah, like when I look back at my IMDb page, I'm certainly proud of what I've done, but moment to moment, you know, I don't necessarily feel like, to me, it's just like, and that's more of a personal thing. And that's not personal as in I won't talk about it, but like personal as, I mean, I definitely will, but personal as in like separate, you could look at it as separate from the career or the word success or things that are objective, like in that sense. But it kind of just comes back to what I said originally, which is be kind to yourself. And because a lot of people might not do that. I've been thinking lately just about when I was thinking about just coming on the podcast and looking back on things and you know, I think I heard someone said once, everything that you say, you're saying to yourself. Maybe you're saying it to other people too, literally, in the literal sense, but like everything, the one person who hears everything you say is you. So it's definitely important, I think, to be mindful of speech. And that's, I think, something I've heard you guys talk about that too on the show, I think is just to be clear and to be mindful of speech and the way you talk about your career and your success and your goals and your life and yourself, because it's such a
reinforced
big behavior. It's like
you don't know what you reinforce. It's often, and I think even if you have a healthy ego, especially if you have a healthy ego, because we all have ego, so whether it's healthy or not, you tend to reinforce what you verbalize. And so if that's negative, that will happen that way, right? It's not like an option to avoid it. If that's positive, it'll also happen the same way.
Yeah, you can be a fountain or a drain, you know, right? You can, it's positive, is being positive and talking in a positive sense just helps a lot. And it's nice. It's just nicer for people to be around you and they'll want to work with you more too.
Taylor, did you have anybody like when you were 17 aspiring to get to where you are today? Like, did you have anybody you could ring up? And I had bosses that I knew were going to be there for 10 years, right? Like, as an actor, it's like, it's friggin' competitive, right? So it's almost like, have you been lucky enough to develop a relationship with someone that you would call a mentor?
Outside of my family, not really. I mean, it was my family, especially at that point, like 17, and so like going into college, and then again coming out here, it was my mom, and you know, I mean, I talk to my mom all the time. Still, there were people I came across later in life, you know, later in college, teachers and stuff too, that I looked up to, and then I learned things from. And then in college, you know, like the head of the program and I were pretty close. But no, you know, like in terms of, you know, it's interesting. A lot of the, you know, I spent a lot of time with people in high school who were into theater, and most of them didn't go into it. And then even at college as a theater major, you know, I show up day one and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going to move to LA and be an actor. And they're all like, oh yeah, cool. I don't know. I'm not really sure what I'm really,
yeah.
And even by the end, it was like, oh, I don't know. Like, and I was just like, man, like I'm taking a risk by majoring in theater. So I might as well be the thing. And there weren't a lot of people I knew that were going to be doing that. Now some of them have.
That's crazy.
You know, some of them have done acting and still do, but it was I felt unique then. I felt unique there too in that regard.
Well, you were definitely striving for bigger goals, right? Then you're like, I can't imagine having classmates in engineering school that were like, well, I don't really know what I'm going to do after this.
Yeah,
it's not real clear yet. Like, what the fuck are you in school for then, man? Like, can I ask, have you had the opportunity to mentee anyone?
To be a mentor? Not as much as I'd like. I mean, I have a nephew that I'm pretty close with and have been pretty close with. our interests are different. We don't live in the same state, but like I consider myself someone he probably looks up to. But no, in terms of like no, I don't think there's anyone who would consider me had a theater and film, it's kind of like two sides to the same coin, but they are a lot different, and the personality types are different, and there's some there's some overlay for sure, but I was the only one in college who was it was a small program. I was the only one who was like specifically focused on film until I met my friend Cordello, and he was really into film too, and he still is, and we still talk. And I think he and I have kind of been mentors to each other. But there have been other people that I at certain points was like that I looked up to and learned things from. And Ryan, you're one of those people. I mean, when I was in Atlanta, I was like, oh dude, this guy's awesome. And Anna too, both of you. I was like, oh, these guys know what they're doing. And I learned a lot from you guys in that time. So you're there. And then it's interesting. I don't know. Like, I don't know who knows about me.
I really appreciate that. I will say that being a mentor does not come from waiting and letting it come to you. And so, some of the things that I'm fortunate enough to do, it's important to me because my story is not similar to yours, but it's a gratitude story. In that, like, I'm probably not supposed to be doing this. I'm supposed to be like, drunk at a bar, happy hour right now after finishing a shift in some, uniform based career. Okay.
In Michigan,
in Michigan or, surrounding area. And I'm not supposed to be doing that. Right. But for me, there were a lot of people in my life that made those shifts, and kind of kept me bringing my parentheses, culture together, so that I have a bit of freedom that, I'm really fortunate in my life to have freedom that I think a lot of people don't have. And, most of that has been because of relationships. So I want to give a second to kind of close down here. But one of the things I like straight up want to challenge you for, because I would do this if we were on the phone or not,
yeah.
This is to find somebody to mentor. But you have to kind of go to look for them. And then you have to chase them down, and you have to call them up when they don't call you. And you have to pull them out and those kinds of things. And I've had some failures. I mean, I had a little brother through the Boys and Girls Club that turned out to be a really tough position, and it was really a failure in that way. But you do have to do it. And the payoff that you can get from mentoring, the relationship that you get from mentoring is it brings you, for some reason, some more joy than things you do for yourself. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So listen, and Mike, if I'm not jumping the gun here, because it's the middle of everybody's day.
He's jumping the gun. I'm not ready to close it out. All
right, Mike, get your last question in here, because Mike's got the last question or two.
We got to talk about Monte.
Don't forget to tell us.
Exactly.
Okay, that's where I was going to go. Is Monte. I was going to go to Monte.
I have to comment on the last point that Ryan was making in terms of the mentorship. Like Ryan's an older brother. We're younger brothers, Taylor,
yeah.
right? So I can appreciate it's not as natural for us. You're right. We've all been at the pivot. But what I would scream to anyone possibly listening to this is, if you don't want to reach out to Taylor, if that's not, reach out to someone else. Find someone like this with this attitude. You may not have all the answers, but there's going to be bumps, and sometimes you need someone to just see a brighter side of you. And that's what a mentor should be able to provide. These 2-hour segments go by pretty quickly, but we started off talking about the diversity that is Taylor. I mean, you're a podcast, you're an actor, you're a screenwriter. You've mentioned rapper a couple times, and I want to give an opportunity to share that with our audience a little bit. I'm not putting you on the spot and asking you to rap here. Sorry, we don't have the audio quality for that. I just I guess what I'm getting at is it's kind of a 2-part thing. I'd like you to talk a little bit about that. Like, I don't know if it's a persona or and I asked Ryan about this beforehand, and I apologize for putting you on the spot here, but these days as a working actor, does that mean you just do as much as you can to get yourself out there?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to say I'll leave it at that. Like, I guess I'm just really curious to hear more about it.
Yeah. Well, the rapping thing, it's funny. I just thought of this, like a seminal moment in that is similar to what we were talking about earlier with seeing Air Force One when I was 7. When I was 8, I somehow talked my mom into getting me a Tupac CD. It was a single of Changes that came out. I think it came.
Oh man, you were 8 when Changes came out?
Wow,
okay.
Taylor, we are fucking old.
They recorded that song I think in like 92, but it came out in like 98. Yeah, I was 8.
But it came out on the double album.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And I just got the single of it, but it was just like so I got that, and that's when I was like, oh, okay, rap's. I mean, as an 8-year-old, rap's cool. Then it kind of went away for a while, and then after I moved. So I moved from Atlanta after I was done there. I went to Pittsburgh for like 2.5 years and actually lived with my parents.
Yeah.
So I lived with my parents for 2.5 years in Pittsburgh before moving back to LA, which is where I am now and where I've been for since 2015. But during those 2 years in Pittsburgh, 2.5 years in Pittsburgh, I was, not feeling great. I was not feeling great about myself. I wasn't feeling great, period. Just was not in a great place. Wasn't in a healthy place really. And looking back on it, I think I must have needed to adapt to create some sort of persona I needed to be someone else for a minute, I guess. And I had a friend, Eli, who was in Pittsburgh at the time too. He had just graduated college and he was living at home too. And we kind of we had been friends in high school. So we just started hanging out again. Okay. So we're hanging out, we're driving around, killing time, whatever, however you kill time. And he could freestyle. So Eli could freestyle really well and he liked rap a lot, but so he would throw on, I don't know if you guys have heard of the band Rat-a-Tat. So Rat-a-Tat's good. They're all instrumental music. They don't have the instrumental. Yeah. So Rat-a-Tat has a CD called 9 Beats, and it's just 9 beats, and they're all like 2 minutes to 2.5 minutes. They're all really good, and their titles are like they're called 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and they're really easy to rap over. So we'd be driving around, just the two of us hanging out, countryside, and he'd be freestyling. And I'm laughing my ass off, and like I would try to freestyle a little bit. I'm okay at it. I'm not great. He's much better. So we'd do that. And eventually I was just like, dude, like I'm gonna write, like, how about we just write like 2 or 3 songs to like 2 or 3 of these beats. Like, so let's take 1 and let's take 3 and let's just write like 2 songs. I'll write a verse. You write a verse. We don't got to worry about hooks or anything. It's a short song. Let's just do it. Why not? So like, okay. So I wrote a verse. He wrote a verse. And we were showing it to each other. We were laughing our ass off. We're like, oh my God, we're actually pretty good at this. And we knew a guy who was in a band and who kind of did the recording for them too, and mixed and mastered and had a recording set up. His name is Mac. So we went to him and we're like, hey dude, we've written like 3 songs to 3 of these 9 beats. And it was just like, okay, obviously we don't own the rights to that, but we could just release it on SoundCloud, not for profit. And that would be fine. We're not trying to make money off it. So we could just release them as a mixtape.
Yeah.
So we're like, hey man, we want to do these 3 songs that we wrote. And he's like, oh, from 9 beats? And we're like, yeah. And he's like, dude, just do all 9. So we did all 9. We wrote lyrics for all 9 beats, and we recorded it, Mac mixed and mastered, and we released a mixtape it was only on SoundCloud because we couldn't put it anywhere else really. We put it on SoundCloud. It was there for years. It's not there anymore, but it was there for years. And the mixtape is called Rude, Crude, and Correct. And we were Church and Be Worthy. He was Church, as in like, church, like when you're agreeing with something. And then I was Be Worthy. So that was,
what's Be Worthy?
I don't know. It just kind of sounded cool. I was like, just be, and then that space worthy, and you got to be worthy, So that was me. That was us. We did that. And I was like, oh, wow.
Sounds like fucking DC talk.
Yeah. Yeah. So I got out here.
Chitty bang.
Yeah. When I moved back out here, I was just like, oh, you know what? I kind of want to keep doing this. Like, I kind of want to make an EP. So I want to make a solo EP with original beats so that I can release it everywhere and just see what I can do. And I actually found out that there was another guy named Be Worthy who had like way more material out. So I did change my name, and I was like, okay, yeah, I was like, oh, so then I became Monte, and I still am Monte. And so my friend Bruce Billion, he produced my first EP, mixed and mastered it, helped me record it. And that came out last year. That's called River Horse. It's available everywhere. That was a lot of fun. Made a music video for that. That was cool. And then, we're working on our second EP right now. We're going to release it in February. We did release a single from that one.
Yeah, the
too.
single I heard.
Yeah. So the first EP was called River Horse. This next one's going to be called Beach Creature. And the single that's out is called Proper Villain. But that's me and Bruce Billion there. That's Monte. I don't know. I needed something else.
Dude.
Yeah.
You got guts, man.
Yeah.
Like you're a humble, like kind of quiet dude, but you're really courageous. And I'm not saying like courageous, like, oh, walk out on the stage naked, but like these are endeavors that you've spearheaded, with not with arrogance, but with kind of some confidence and just like your dad told you, you can be positive or you can be negative.
Yeah.
If you want to do this, do it.
Yeah.
Dude, I was like, you're talking about Pittsburgh. And you mentioned your buddy Mac, and I'm just like,
not that guy.
God. Like
no,
you heard you heard our friends Mikey and Bob.
Dude, that
right?
was cool because those guys are straight up famous there. Like,
do you have memory of like were they shut the fuck up? Really?
I was like, oh my God, that's everyone knows them. Everyone knows them.
Yeah,
they were. I think that was happening when I was in high school, but maybe if not right after. But they're a huge deal there, like huge.
Hey, thanks for taking time to listen to Mike and I today. I wanted to talk to you just for 1 second about reviewing the podcast. It really, really helps us out, and it places us higher on search engines as well as the other podcast channels that publish our show. So if you listen to conventioNOT, you dig what you hear, take a second, go out, give us 5 stars, give us a few kind words, or just real words, whatever the hell you want to say.
I love your perspective on it, because the reality is like Ryan and I talk about this with all of our guests, and it's important to note that like your pursuits have consistently, you haven't mentioned money once.
Yeah.
And it's obvious to anyone, right? Like movie stars and rappers and whatever. We presume famous people are rich.
Yeah.
The reality is the pursuit of fame does not involve making money at all. If anything, it's the exact opposite of that, right? Taylor, I love that you say like you look at your IMDb and you're not content. And that's how we should be, right? The rest of us are looking at it going, damn, this dude has acted in a bunch of movies. He set out to be an actor. He succeeded. Anybody that spends 5 minutes with you is going to walk away being like, I don't know what the hell that dude's doing. He's happy and I want to talk to him again. Yeah. And like, these are choices that we really all like. It's a choice. You've been graced with some opportunity and some talent, obviously, and some luck along the way. But, none of this was handed to you, man. And I just really, really love talking to you today. And like, you ever need somebody to lift you up, man, I can't imagine it, but don't hesitate to give me a call, bro.
For sure.
Like, you're a rock star in my mind,
man. Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
All right, listen, before you hang up, everybody can use the content followers.
Oh yeah.
Where do we find you? How do we download? Where's Monte? If I want to listen to Monte, just give us the whole thing.
Well, the Monte is everywhere. River Horse and then Proper Villain, both. They're on every streaming thing you can imagine. Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, whatever. And it's everywhere. So if you look up Monte, you'll find it.
MONTAY, right?
Yeah. So that's available
Right,
wherever streaming is available. And then as far as links to finding my acting work, I would say check out IMDb and go from there. There's some of the movies are on Amazon, some are here and there. You can buy whatever, but in terms of titles, I'll just go from IMDb. And then Instagram's a big one. It's I_am_Monte, MONTAY. If you just look up my full name, if you look up Taylor Piedmonte too, I'll pop up. And then there's a Monte page for Facebook too, but it doesn't mean too much. But NBA Junkies is on iTunes or Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And we have a Facebook page for that too. It's a group, so you can request to join, and it's called NBA Junkies. Jeff Scott Carey is my co-host for that, and then Bruce Billionaire is my producer for Monte. So yeah,
I highly suggest you guys get out and take a moment and look this character up. He will certainly be back on the show.
Yeah. Cool, man.
You've been inspirational in my life. It excites me to hear the kind compliments from you, but you've also been inspirational in some of those downtimes for me.
Thank you.
Which I will make sure that we talk about at some point in the future. For us, it's at conventioNOT _podcast on almost every platform now. We've got the Facebook thing, just like you mentioned, Taylor. We don't really fuck too much with Facebook, but we do put it out there, and it's there if you want to like us, and people do. So please join, please review, please get out and check out Taylor, and we'll talk to everybody in the near future. Thanks again, Taylor.
Thanks again, man.
Thank you, Taylor.
Alrighty.
It was really great, man. It was really great catching up. Good luck.
Thanks,
Good
man.
luck with what's next.
Alrighty. Take it easy. Bye.
See ya.
Take care, brother.